evening. I'd like to call the Maplewood Planning Commission.
Mr. Chair, there we go. The red light just came on.
Oh, okay.
You're good now.
He gave me the thumbs up.
Okay.
Good evening. I'd like to call the Maplewood City Planning Commission to order on September 21st. The roll call.
Cheryl Sapolsky, present.
John Eads, present.
Tushar Desai, present.
Paul Arbuckle, present. Okay, we're missing a couple here, I think.
Yep, Frederick is missing. And Lou is missing.
Okay. Approval of the agenda. Any corrections?
Chairman, with the approval of the agenda, I would like to propose the subsidiary motion as we look to approve the agenda. That motion would be that item number 3 be looked at to be tabled for a future meeting, secondary to lack of information. And the reason I'm bringing this up is that in regards to the property management, the property surveys of the property, that property, that survey of the citizens was really inadequate based on the geographical location of the proposed property. If you use the 500 square foot parameter, it's mostly park area and the lake, so that only 20 property owners were surveyed. And if you compare that to number 2, with both of these projects being similar, there was 231 surveys went out to the community. So I feel like that really looked at how many people had input from surveys from the cities based on the narrow interpretation of the 5,000.
I think it's always geared on the distance from the property. The reason I think there's so many more significance from the other location is because the condos that are right next to it. Isn't that true?
You are right.
Right.
But shall we move forward and then when that particular subject comes, you can make a motion at that time? And see how it works out?
Yeah, so I'm suggesting that should we table that for a future until that could potentially be looked at with the approval of the
Chair and Commission,
agenda.
I can just provide, the ordinance requires a 500-foot notification radius. We did both on both projects, as was mentioned. Sometimes you have more, sometimes you have less, but the standard doesn't deviate. We do 500 feet. Whether you want to table it, I think you should probably, Chair, it's your board, it's your meeting, but, it probably makes sense to have that discussion within the context of the item itself, but that's,
Right.
agenda's at your purview.
And I brought that up as that amendment before we approve it, so that could be addressed.
So you're saying you'd like
I just wanted to make sure that was clear, that there was a concern about how much citizen involvement was in this decision-making as part of the agenda, that we're going to discuss that.
Okay, but at this time, you don't want to table it, you would just continue forward and.
That's up to whether anybody seconds my motion or not.
Okay. I guess we're looking for a second if somebody feels there's not enough information or.
But as a matter of process, and I'm asking for the city staff to help here, this agenda has been already established, so I don't think this is the time to decide whether this should be on the agenda or not. We really should get down to that agenda item and then make a decision. And he can make his request, and we'll see if there is a second or whatever discussion needs to take place.
Chair and Commission, correct. There should be a basis for tabling the item when you are hearing out the item and listening to the applicants and providing that feedback. The agenda has been presented based on our code and ordinances and guidelines and policies that have put in place. So I don't see anything unfit with the agenda, but I think when you discuss the item itself, you as a commission as a whole can decide what action you would like to take.
Right. I agree, yes. Okay. So other than that, is there any other corrections or additions to the agenda? Hearing none, Been a motion by Allen,
Second.
second by Deshar. All those in favor?
Aye.
Hearing all ayes, passed. Approval of the minutes. Any corrections or additions to the minutes on August 7th?
Move to approve. Okay.
Okay, but there's been a motion by Allen, second by Deshar. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hearing all ayes, passed. We are at number E, public hearing, Mississippi River corridor, critical area and slope and bluff ordinance. Staff?
Chair and members of the commission. So we're here tonight to discuss the Mississippi River Corridor Critical Area and Slopes and Bluffs Ordinance. You recall we did give you a briefing on this last month, but tonight we're here for the required public hearing. So for just a brief background, the Maplewood MRCCA and Slopes Ordinance was adopted in the 1970s, the original one. Then on January 4th of 2017, the new MRCCA rules were adopted by the state. So now local governments are required to update the ordinance based on those new rules. And the deadline for Maplewood's review is October 1st of 2021. As you recall, our MRCCA area is located in the South Leg. It's about 145 acres south of Carver Avenue and west of 494. It encompasses mainly open space, the City of Maplewood, Fish Creek open space, and Ramsey County open space sites. And then there are also 35 residential homes located within that district. Here's our timeline that we have been following to adopt this ordinance. So you can see that the Environmental Commission has been working on this since last October. We did some education and outreach with the residents in that area, as well as an article in the newsletter. We brought it to the Environmental Commission for final review of the public comments, as well as the DNR and Friends of Mississippi comments. They recommended approval of that in August, both those ordinances. And then here we are tonight for the public hearing. This will go to the City Council next Monday, and then we'll pass it on to the DNR for their final review by October 1st, meeting our deadline. The DNR model MRCCA ordinance was used by the city. They had drafted this for local governments to use. It covers all of the required rules within the MRCCA, including development and vegetative management. And the purpose of the MRCCA ordinance is regulations for land within the MRCCA district only. So it's an overlay district, and all the underlying districts, which is single family and open space, they still apply. The new ordinance is consistent with the state rules. It does establish standards to protect primary conservation areas and public river corridor views from development impacts. Of course, our corridor does not include any river frontage, but we do have bluffs, and we do have some scenic views of the river down in that south leg. It's also to establish standards that sustain and enhance the biological and ecological functions of vegetation and preserve the natural character and topography of the district, because there are a lot of nice natural features down there with the bluffs and the scenery. And then maintain stability of those bluffs and steep slopes. So you heard the entire ordinance last month, so I'm just going to focus in on the items that might affect the single-family homes that are located down there. So the principal and accessory structure setbacks to bluffs, previously the requirement was a 40-foot setback, and now the new rules require a 100-foot setback. We estimate that 18 single-family homes are built closer than that 100-foot to the bluffs. So those homes, what does that mean for them? Well, they have a lot of allowances in place, exemptions in place for those existing structures. So they have that 100-foot setback, number one, average setback. So if a house is located closer to a bluff on one side and then the other, they can build up to that averaging. And then accessory structures under 200 square feet and decks may encroach into the required setback. And the current ordinance doesn't allow that, so that builds in some additional protections for them. There is some vegetation removal permits required now, but that's for large-scale vegetation, which we likely won't see on a single-family home, mainly on our open space sites, which of course will be managed by the city or the county. And then nonconformities, so those homes that are built closer to the bluffs, of course, are all legally nonconforming and can remain. And then they also can expand laterally as long as they don't encroach further onto the bluff. So that's an outline of our MRCCA ordinance. And we did submit that to the DNR, like I had indicated, in June and July. They reviewed our ordinance and sent back a preliminary approval, and that letter was included in your staff report. And it does include some changes to the ordinance, amendments to the bluff and bluff impact definitions, just a couple additional words that we had missed, and then add a section on water quality impact zones, something else that we had missed. It was kind of a large project because the model ordinance was for all the cities within the MRCCA, so there was all sorts of regulations that didn't really apply to the city of Maplewood, so we had to kind of cut and paste and narrow it down. And looks like we got most of it, but this water quality impact zone we had missed. So that has been added. Then the Friends of the Mississippi River, they have been following the ordinance adoptions in all the cities within the corridor. And they actually came and gave a presentation to our Environmental Commission. It was very interesting on the overall corridor and how that's a state or a national park. But they reviewed our ordinance and said that they were quite pleased. It does have some allowances in there that go above and beyond the actual rule requirements, so they were impressed with that. They did add two items that they thought we should look at. Expand the bird-safe lighting requirements, and this is generally having lighting with a sharp cutoff so it doesn't illuminate the sky. And the city of Maplewood actually has a lighting ordinance that requires that throughout the city of Maplewood. So the Environmental Commission didn't think it was necessary to add that additional layer onto this MRCCA because the protection is already there. And then require vegetation restoration to be prepared by a qualified individual. That's how the language is in the code. And then the Friends of Mississippi wanted us to add, with demonstrable experience and knowledge related to management and natural areas such as natural resource manager or ecologist. And
Why do you think they recommended that to have that done? Is it just to make sure that it's done precisely right? Is that instead of some kind of long guy, is that kind of what?
Mr. Chair, I think that is correct, that they had probably found that restoration by a knowledgeable restoration company or ecologist, tends to turn out better than, the DIY projects, things like that. And in our case, a majority of the land that will probably be, some sort of natural resources management is in the open space sites with the city and the county. And of course, we have on staff and of course work with consultants that are experienced in these areas. So I really don't see that as being an issue for our homeowners because they likely won't do a large scale restoration project like that. So the Environmental Commission did recommend adding that language.
Right.
Moving on to the slopes and bluffs ordinance, and this ordinance regulates the steep slopes throughout the city. So that includes the MRCCA district as well as, lands right here. However, we do know that a majority of our steep slopes are located in the MRCCA. There are some other steep slopes scattered throughout the city. So this ordinance, we wanted to take a look at and make sure it was consistent with the MRCCA ordinance. And the purpose for it is to maintain slope stability, protect downstream water bodies from sedimentation, preserve native plant and wildlife communities, preserve natural topography, and maintain existing drainage patterns, and then also the setbacks and stormwater management and vegetation management. So with this ordinance, again, it was presented to you last month, so I'm just going to focus in on some of the regulations that may affect homeowners. So structure placement, the placement of a principal and accessory structure, decks, and facilities near bluff lines and steep slopes. And again, we likely don't have any bluffs outside of the MRCCA. We haven't done a full study, but in the event that we do, we wanted to add that language in the slope ordinance. So we are calling out a 40-foot setback for those structures. Now, this was the required setback in the MRCCA district, you may recall, before the rules had changed. So we didn't have a setback for steep slopes. So we debated whether this was a manageable setback. And we looked at the reasons for that. Was it because of, issues with erosion on a slope, or was it because of the visual effect of building so close to a slope? And really, it's for both reasons. So we felt that that 40-foot was a reasonable setback to a steep slope. Now, there are some structures out there, mainly like a garage or something, built close to a steep slope that I am familiar with. And we did build into the ordinance non-conforming language similar to the MRCCA. So those could be expanded laterally as long as they do not encroach further towards the steep slope. And of course, receive a building permit, and grading permit, which would look at all of the aspects of whether it was a safe place to build a structure near that slope. So in conclusion, tonight, this is a public hearing, so if you could open the public hearing, take any type of public comment, close the public hearing, and then staff is recommending a motion to recommend approval of the Mississippi River Corridor Critical Area and Slopes and Bluffs Ordinance. And I stand for questions.
The one here that talks about the soil erosion and that, like 5 tons per acre, how are they going to gauge that when they, the runoffs and that? How do they know that?
I had my phone, and now it's gone, and I can't. It's back there. I'll get it. So what section was that in?
That was number 3, section 18466, erosion control and soils. So they're just talking about that the developer has to control the runoff, and it can only so much can run off. I guess I'm wondering how they came up with those calculations and how they're going to gauge that and enforce that.
And that's in the MRCCA ordinance? I'm assuming, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Boy, where's your little laptop when you need it? So now this, I'm assuming, would be reviewed as part of the overall grading permit, and those calculations could be made. But I'm going to search that area and get a better answer here for you. And again, these are regulations mainly required by the MRCCA rules. And so your question is, how can we enforce that?
Well, I guess I'm just wondering how they know that 5 tons per acre is already ran off, or 2 tons per acre, how they can know that that amount of soil is run off, and to gauge that, I guess, is my, it might be just a stupid question, I don't know.
Right, and I'm probably not qualified to answer exactly, but what I would like to do is discuss that part of the ordinance with the DNR as well as our Public Works Director tomorrow to make sure we're not missing something.
Okay, that's
So thanks
fine.
for pointing that out. You're right. How does that work?
Yeah, how do they know?
I'll learn something.
Did anybody have any other questions for Shauna?
It's pretty clear.
Not yet.
I was to answer your question. They can measure the erosion level of a steep slope or bluff by how much distance it comes in every year. That's the rate of erosion.
Say that one more time?
The rate of erosion they can measure how much sediment is coming off a steep slope or a bluff by how far it recedes each year.
Oh, okay.
So, Mr. Chair, she was referring to the erosion on the actual slope.
Slopes,
How
right,
much it
right.
exceeds.
This is more of a,
Recedes.
this is more of
Recedes.
a runoff.
Yeah. Is there an engineer in the room?
There we go.
My dad's a soil scientist.
Thank you.
I did just have one clarifying
go ahead.
question. And it was, and thank you for including the Friends of the Mississippi feedback. In it, when they had said that they referenced the ordinance not requesting the height and setback variances, could you just help direct, I couldn't find that in the actual ordinance of where that language was listed, and so I just wanted to clarify that.
And could you repeat again, you're referring to the Friends, their letter, and
Yep.
something they referred to?
Yep, they mentioned that the requirement that structures may not request both a height and setback variance together, but I wasn't sure where that was contained within the ordinance, because I did not read that in the ordinance.
Oh, yeah, they were pointing out things that we did above and beyond, and that was one of them.
Right, and I
Okay.
wasn't sure the language around it, because I couldn't find it in the ordinance, and so was just looking for some direction
Right.
on where to find that.
Well, let's take a look. It would probably be in the, there is a section on variances within the MRCCA. And that is located,
Setbacks.
say again?
Is it in the setbacks?
Boy, you think I'd know this back and forth since I've been working on it for a year.
Sometimes when we're so far in it, it's hard to, you get lost in it.
Yeah. Well, standing before you here, I can't really find exact language that they're referring to.
Well, we can have you come up a little after you.
Yeah, I'll research
Looking.
as you're taking any public comment, but they also have been reviewing so many ordinances, I wonder if they mixed it up.
Which is entirely
Yeah,
possible.
yeah, but it certainly wasn't anything negative on our part.
Right.
Yeah, but
I
you're,
just didn't recall from
Right.
last time us discussing whether or not that was something that could happen. So
I'll take a
just
look at
wanted to clarify. Thank you.
because they liked it, so maybe we should do it.
So what you're saying, it was in the MRCCA's ordinance recommendations, but it's not in the final document of the,
At least not that I could find.
It was in the
So
Friends of Mississippi letter, correct?
the Friends of Mississippi referenced it.
Okay.
And said it was a good thing we had it, but then I couldn't find the language around it in our ordinance. And so want to make sure that we're looking at and have the right things where they need to be.
well, we'll give Sean
So
a
the
chance
letter
to.
is talking about two recommendations. Is one of them you are talking about?
It was not one of the two recommendations, it's just more for clarification,
Oh.
because the Friends of the Mississippi was under the impression we were going forward with an ordinance that has those two things that require, or that requirement in it. But if it doesn't actually have it in it, I want to just make sure that we're clear, so that in the future, if something were to come up, we're not then trying to piece together what happened.
Okay, well, we'll have Shauna work on that then.
I think for the most part, you can see that I think the city of Maplewood ordinance is reflecting the NCC, ordinances. Yeah. So just a copy of what has been going on.
Right, she's just concerned about that one line.
And a note from the control room to use microphone. Somebody's microphone was not, yeah.
Is yours on? Everybody's on now.
Yep.
Yep.
Well, why don't you take a look at that then, Shauna, and we will see if anybody's has any questions or anything that want to come up or comments on this then, and that way you won't have to stand there and look like.
Thank you.
Okay. Would anybody like to come up and have any questions or comments on the slopes and bluffs? Okay, go ahead, come Is there a sign-in sheet up there? Or? Okay.
I will be sure to sign in. Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Colleen O'Connor-Toberman from Friends of the Mississippi River. So it's a real pleasure to be here tonight, and I hope I can respond to a couple of your questions. Can you hear me okay through my mask? Great, great. First, I just want to thank the city, thank Sean for the city's really good work on this ordinance. It's been a very careful process. And considering that this only applies to 145 acres of your city, I think that really reflects Maplewood's care for the environment and the thought with which you are going about this, and I appreciate that. As Sean so fantastically summarized our feedback, definitely give your ordinance high marks. It's thoughtful, it's careful, and we really appreciate it. I'll respond first to the question, Chair Arbuckle, about the qualified individual for creating vegetation management plans in the case of a vegetation permit. It's correct that these will probably apply pretty rarely to individual homeowners. You'll only need a vegetation permit if you're conducting intensive clearing, which is not extremely likely to be happening on a single-family home's yard. But in the case where there is and there's a permit required, the idea of preparing that management plan from a qualified individual is just a little vague, and it can leave people questioning, maybe neighbors even questioning each other's plans about what they're going to do in their yard, because what determines a qualified individual? So clearer language about having a natural resource manager or ecologist is just intended to help everyone feel like that expertise that's being presented is trustworthy, is up to date on the latest in native vegetation and erosion prevention in particular for bluffs and things like that. So that's Friends of the Mississippi's River recommendation about that. I am just pulling up your draft ordinance. I was going to try to find the answer to your question, Commissioner. I'm happy to take a seat and see if anyone else wants to speak and come back up once I can pull that up. I believe it's somewhere in the requirements for approving conditional use permits that it talks about that being a criteria that the structure seeking a height conditional use permit or variance meets one condition of that is that it meets the setback requirements, but I would have to double check to make sure I'm giving you the precise wording for that.
Thank you. And yes, again, it wasn't saying what we had prepared is not accurate. It was just wanting to make sure that we're all on the same page.
Yes. Let me see if I can find it very quickly, and if not, I will take a seat. There we go. So it is in section 18588, structure height and placement. I don't know if I bet I don't have the same page numbers that you would have in your packet. But it talks about criteria for considering whether or not to grant a variance for structures exceeding height limits must include a determination that the proposed structure meets the required bluff setbacks. So that way, if someone is seeking a variance to build a taller building, they are not also able to be seeking a variance or conditional use permit at the same time to build closer to the bluff. And I think that's a really strong protection, especially when you're thinking about views and scenic protection. If your building is going to be taller than is allowed and closer than is allowed, that can kind of be doubling down on those impacts. So I think it's a great thing to have in your ordinance.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
And is it? And is it in ours?
Yes.
It is, okay.
Yes, it is. It was, what did I say, 18588, the section about structure, height, and placement.
It should be there.
Yeah, I don't think it was in our
Yeah,
packet,
it's
which
not
is
in the
why
packet, it stops at 18466.
the wanting to clarify. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, anybody else? Final and last call if anybody wants to speak on the bluffs and slopes. Seeing none, we close the public hearing. And anybody else have any other questions?
Nope, I think it's
Okay,
good.
we need a motion.
Mr. Chair, I just want to thank Colleen for her comments. I didn't see you back there, so thank you very much. And thank you for your review.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't, thank you too. Okay.
Chair, make a motion?
Go ahead.
Motion to recommend approval of the Mississippi River Corridor Critical Area and Slopes Bluff Ordinance as presented today.
Been a motion by,
Second.
motion by Deshar, second by Allen. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Hearing all ayes. This passed, and this is just our recommendation. And this goes before the city next Monday. Is that what you said, Shauna?
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Number 2, Lower Afton Apartments, 2501 London Lane, A, zone map amendment ordinance, and B, conditional use permit resolution. Staff?
Thank you, Chair and Commission. As mentioned, we are looking at a proposed project at 2501 London Lane. The applicant is proposing a 148-unit multifamily building located on the former fire station site. The city of Maplewood currently owns this property, and the city council has agreed to a purchase agreement with the applicant that's before you tonight. The size of the property is 5.92 acres. And to move forward with this project, the applicant needs approval of a zoning map amendment, a conditional use permit for building height and design review. The Planning Commission tonight will specifically be looking at the zoning map amendment and conditional use permit. The site is currently guided as high-density residential by the 2040 Comprehensive Plan. This designation was put in place in 2019. State statute requires that zoning designations are consistent with the Comprehensive Plan Guide, and so that consistency is brought forward with rezoning this property from the current designation of F Farm residence to the R3 multiple dwelling designation. Within the 2040 Comp Plan Guide of high density residential and the R3 multiple dwelling, the proposed use both meets the comprehensive plan requirements and is a permitted use within the multiple dwelling zoning district. As I previously mentioned, a conditional use permit is exclusively required here because of the building height. The use is a permitted use. For buildings that are more than 3 stories or 35 feet in height, this conditional use permit requirement is in play. The building is proposed to be 3 stories, but the pitch of the roof does exceed that 35 feet in height, and that Maplewood measures height from the grade to the midpoint of the roof, and that comes in at about 40 feet. And just as a point of information, the top of the 3rd floor is proposed to be at approximately 31 feet. So again, that pitch of the roof is where you get that added height. Looking into the design aspect and providing this to the Planning Commission tonight, so you have the full picture of the proposed project. The site would be accessed by 2 drives off London Lane. There's a westerly drive access on the west side of the building, and then a smaller parking lot on the east side of the building, which will also have an access drive there. There would be no access drives off Lower Afton Road, which is a change of the current use today, where the fire station does have access drives, so those would be removed. A building is required to be 30 feet setback from both Lower Afton Road and London Lane. The building, as proposed, would be 40.5 feet from Lower Afton and 31.3 feet from London Lane. The building, again, by code, is required to be set back 100 feet from the west property line, and as proposed, it will be set back 159 feet. There is a pipeline that runs along the west side of the site. The building is required, again, to be set back 100 feet from that pipeline. At its closest point, the building, as proposed, would be 125.9, just under 126 feet from that pipeline. So the building is meeting all setbacks that the city's zoning code outlines. Parking lot is required to be 15 feet setback from both Lower Afton and London Lane, and then 20 feet from the west property line, and as well meeting those setback requirements. You can see a rendering of the building. Again, all these plans were included with your packet for the meeting tonight. The building is proposed to be constructed of the following materials, again, including your staff reports and on the screen right now. The Community Design Review Board did review this project from a design aspect and recommended approval. All floor area requirements, so the minimum unit sizes for each the 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units would be exceeding city requirements or city minimum requirements. And the photometric plan does meet the city requirements. Parking, multifamily buildings require 2 parking spaces for each unit. At least half of those need to be covered. So for a project of 148 units, 296 spaces are required. The applicant is proposing to provide 298 spaces, which 151 of those are underground in the garage and 147 between the 2 surface lots. The landscaping plan, the applicant is removing 13 trees and planting 79 new trees, meeting the tree replacement requirements. There is some vegetation along the west boundary that is not being removed. So if you had a chance to visit the site or you have a sense of what we're looking at, just wanted to point out that that's an area that is not necessarily changing from a vegetation standpoint within that western boundary area. And then the applicant is proposing numerous shrubs, perennials, and grasses to be planted throughout the site. And then there is a ordinance requirement that screening from headlight glare must meet ordinance requirements. So in the staff's recommendation for the design review, there was a requirement that the applicant be required to submit an exhibit showing how they would meet that standard. They can use existing vegetation as long as it's year-round, but they can also use additional vegetation or fence structures, whatever gets them to that 6 foot in height, 80% opaqueness. That's the code standard. A little background on the process here. The developer did hold a neighborhood meeting on August 26th at the Maplewood Nature Center. As part of our notification process, we, again, as code requires, we sent out a notice to the property owners within 500 feet. That encompasses 231 property owners. Notably, there's the 2 condominium buildings to the west of this site. So we sent those property owners a neighborhood survey, and then we sent another letter after that notifying the public hearing, which is occurring tonight. Of those 231 property owners, we received 22 replies that were included with your staff report. I've received a few more letters that have come in since that, and those will be included with the staff report to the City Council. And they do provide consistent themes that emerge with the other letters and that concern with screening and fencing. Just mentioned that in the slide before, and then stormwater and traffic. Tonight we have City's Public Works Director, Steve Love, and he has a few slides to walk through with you tonight to discuss stormwater and traffic.
Good evening, Chair and members of the Commission. We'll start off here with a map that I have for the existing drainage pattern. So what we have here is the proposed site on the very east. You see the existing fire station. You also see some yellow lines there on the property. Those are the existing storm sewer. So this site discharges the stormwater from the fire station at the very west there, where it says existing storm sewer outlet. And the site itself all drains to the northwest. And these are 10-foot contours in blue to give you kind of some idea of the relief. And then the water, the water flows overland to the west, kind of down through this natural drainage area to the pond on the very west side there. And if we skip to the next one. So what I've done here is I've overlaid the proposed site development on the fire station property. At the very northwest corner, you'll see a proposed filtration basin. I just want to make sure that it's not an infiltration basin. So the difference between the two is on an infiltration basin, you generally are treating water for water quality by having the water go through a media and then soak into the underlying ground soils. On a filtration system, you'll have the water soak through that media, and then it's collected by a drain tile underneath and then discharged out of the basin. So that's at the very northwest corner of the proposed development. If we go to the next slide. So I've tried to overlay the two images together here so you can see both the existing and the proposed. And one of the things that you'll note is that there's a little blue dash towards the northwest corner there that is labeled as the proposed storm sewer outlet. That is the location for the discharge from the pond. So that location is moving about 200 feet north of where the existing discharge point is from the fire station. Go to the next slide. And so one of the things that our stormwater requirements have is not only water quality, but rate control. Essentially, with the rate control, the general rule is the proposed development cannot exceed that of the runoff rate of the existing surface or the existing site. And so what you have here are 3 different storm sewer events that we typically design for, the 2, 10, and 100. And you can see that the proposed development is actually reducing the runoff rate from the existing conditions. Next slide. So for the traffic analysis, we hired our consultant, SEH, to perform kind of a high-level traffic evaluation of the site. So looking at the volumes on Lower Afton and London Lane, both in the existing conditions and then looking at estimating what those traffic conditions would be after the development. What we have found is that the existing roadways are expected to function adequately with the increase of traffic from this site. I will point out that the London Lane itself, while it's classified as a local road, it is actually built more to that of a collector road. You'll have 11-foot lanes, and there are, I think, about 5 to 6 foot shoulders on either side of the road there. One of our recommendations is there was questions about improvements to the pedestrian crossing of Lower Afton at the very east corner. Lower Afton is a county road, so we are recommending that the applicant coordinate with Ramsey County on the review of that. Ramsey County has their own pedestrian crossing policy, so we're recommending, one of our recommendations was to have the applicant coordinate that review with them.
Chair and Commission, just one other aspect on here. In the engineering review, I just want to point out there is a condition, a recommended condition of approval of adding a sidewalk segment for the length of this property on the north side of London Lane. So that would run from the west boundary to the existing crosswalk area on Lower Afton. So that would be something that the site plan would be revised before any permits or would be moved forward.
Mr. Chair, Commission, and that is in line with our Living Streets policy. As I mentioned, this road, the design of it is that more of a collector, and that would be in our Living Streets policy. We do look to have a sidewalk at least on one side of the road.
Now, there's, I don't know if I should go down this path or not, but for parking, is there going to be no parking signs there, or are people going to be allowed to park on that street if it, if it gets to be?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, no, there's only 5-foot shoulders, so there's not adequate space to allow on-street parking along London Lane.
Okay, so there'll be no congestion like that then?
Correct.
So is it marked today as no parking?
It is not, I
didn't see
Chair and
any.
members of the commission, I would have to review that. I don't know if there's no parking signs out there at this time.
'Cause I
but-
didn't see any.
There's no parking signs in that
Yep.
section.
Right,
Okay.
I didn't see any, so.
So Chair and Commission, that's the conclusion of staff's presentation tonight. We do recommend approval of both the zoning map amendment from farm to R3 to provide consistency with the 2040 comprehensive plan and for a conditional use permit for building height. The applicant is present to address the board. They do have a few slides they'd like to walk through with you when you're ready to call them up, but at this time staff can stand for any questions the commission may have.
I have more questions regarding both the water flow analysis as well as the traffic analysis. So let's start with the water flow analysis. When I'm reading through this summary that was sent to us, to our homes, one of the things that I read on comments from the neighbors, which is the Connemara 1 and 2, is that they are having water issues in their garages right now as we speak. So this whole 100-year rain and whatever else that we just talked about applied to them as well, correct? And so that's not working for whatever reasons.
Chair, members of the commission, I'm not sure if I quite understand what you're asking, but the 100-year runoff, these are storm events that you design the storm sewer system to. There's a 2, a 10, and a 100, and we look at those to make sure that the storm pipes are sized correctly, that the ponds are sized correctly. In this case, what the requirements of the stormwater ordinance is that you have to show that your runoff rates are either at existing runoff rates or lower, and the applicant's design is showing a reduction of the runoff rate.
I think what he's talking about is that in real time, there is water problem in the basement of the existing building over there. I'm pretty sure they did some analysis at that time, but there's a problem now. And now we want to have another building over there. Yes, the presentation is fine. How is that going to intercept, or what is going on now?
Chair, members of the commission, I guess I cannot comment on why they have water in the basement of those buildings. What I can comment on is that the proposed design, as you can see on the existing slide, is moving that discharge point farther to the north away from that development. And as you can see, there's about 10 feet of relief or more from the Connemara site down to where that water would be crossing at there. So I would not anticipate that the water flowing overland there would be impacting the Connemara buildings there.
That'll be designed to capture more water than what's there now too, right?
Chair, members of the commission, so the pond itself is going to be capturing the filtration basin is going to be capturing the water from the proposed development.
The runoff there.
Yep, that's what's controlling the rate.
Okay.
And so that's where your rate reduction is going to be happening. It's metering it out at a slower rate than what it comes off the existing flow pattern of the site. The filtration basin, like I said, also is the water is being collected by the drain tile and discharged at that outlet location, rather than a system like of infiltration where you're soaking the water of that basin down into the ground. And then if we go back a couple slides, you can see here where we're at the 980 of the second blue line from the right there. It continues to fall, and all that surface water then flows down towards that pond on the west. And you can see that pond is significantly lower than the Connemara site. We have 920 down by that pond, and the lowest elevation roughly by the west Connemara building is around 950. So there's a significant amount of fall there from where that water body is at.
And that's very good that I see that fall. My concern still is that when I see that existing storm sewer outlet in the proposed development, which would be moving up 70, 80, 100 feet further up north, but still all of that parking and all the impervious surface that is in that development, that has to be sloped towards that retention pond. Is that what it would be? To make sure that we are not moving any water towards the Connemara?
Yes, Chair, members of the commission, all the runoff from that site goes into that filtration basin before going out of the new outlet at the location of roughly that blue line there is where that outlet would be, which is roughly 200 feet north of where the existing outlet is for the fire station.
Okay. And
so it is taking that water, that water naturally flows that way now, but it is taking it to that basin first and then metering it out at a slower rate to the west there, crossing up to the north there.
So the area that is in green on this current picture, next to the parking, where which is adjacent to the Connemara property, all of that land also will be slope towards that retention pond?
It already is.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, yes, that's the direction that it currently drains towards.
Right.
And that's what is being proposed as well.
Okay, so it will stay in that same trajectory?
Yes, and matter of fact, looking at the grading and drainage plan on the south side of the building there, where you see a row of trees there, I'm looking at the grading plan, and there's catch basins there that capture the water in that area, and that is all routed up to that filtration basin to the north as well. So they're essentially capturing pretty much the majority of the site, routing it to that filtration basin, and then the outlet of it is that blue line at the very north corner there of the property.
So also too, is the, that lowland that's there now is actually going to be raised up a little bit so that water won't lay there and seep in. It should be diverted more to the north, right?
Again, Chair, members of the commission, so with the proposed plan, all the water of the site is essentially routed to that northwest corner, to that filtration basin, before it leaves the site at that, roughly where that blue line, that dark blue line is, that short one.
Okay. Yeah, because people are concerned about that water coming in there more, and I think what you're doing is definitely going to alleviate that water laying there. It's going to divert it more to the north.
It would certainly direct it away from the Connemara site,
Right,
yep.
right. That's, I think, what we want to hear.
Yep.
So that sewer outlet is still draining on the ground and going towards that pond that is further out?
So the yellow lines won't be there anymore. That's what's existing today. I showed those yellow lines so that you could see how much farther north the outlet is going to be moved to. So then it will discharge out of that outlet where the dark blue is from the new pond to the west towards that 980 contour where the red arrow kind of is cutting through.
Yes.
But so where that small dark blue line is
the location of the new outlet.
and that outlet is just going to gush the water out of that retention pond and out towards that other little pond that is shown in the other picture?
If we can go back again. So you can kind of see the red lines, arrows there.
Yeah.
It's kind of a valley, or like a V. So it comes down from Lower Afton, and it comes down from the Connemara site, and then it flows to the west down to that large pond there on the west there, which, like I mentioned, it's significantly at a lower elevation than the Connemara site, but that's where all the water is going to flow through, kind of through that V, kind of a valley shape that you have there.
And so that pond where that number 122 is very close to the Connemara parking lots, I see there, or the homes. And so that is planned to be able to hold the 100-year rains from this development into that pond?
There's an outlet there too, right here.
Chair, members of the commission, yeah, that pond then flows north, outlets to the north, crossing Lower Afton there.
So it
That's right,
crosses
sir.
across from Lower Afton Road East and then into that open area there?
Yep, and then it continues
Oh.
westwards, yep.
Mississippi.
And the reason why we have like the rate control is we want to make sure that we're not flooding areas downstream. And that's why we're looking to have the pre and post runoff rates at least be the same. In this case, the post-construction, the new site will have a lower runoff rate than it is today. So it'll be at a lower speed coming out of there. But it'll all that whole site will be directed towards the filtration basin before it leaves at where that new outlet is, where that short little blue line is.
Okay.
So it does, the plan is taking that water, moving it, to the north, away from Connemara before going down through that valley there.
Okay. So then my other question was regarding traffic. I saw you mention that SEH did the study, but do we have any statistics of what is the current traffic rate on Lundin Lade and what the new proposed traffic would be and how it fits in with the design of the road and the traffic levels?
Yes, Chair, members of the commission, I do. So today, just make sure I'm reading the right line here. So London Lane currently has about so to the west of Sterling Street, there's about 3,100 vehicles per day that travel in the area going west of Sterling Street. There's about 1,650 vehicles that are traveling between McKnight and Sterling Street. And they're looking to have an increase on the road of a little less than 10% increased traffic overall on London. And it looks like they're adding we're roughly estimating the total daily trips are going to increase by 800. Overall, the development is expected to generate less than 10% increase of traffic on the roadway.
And there's going to be a crosswalk between the proposed and the existing park over there. There's a park across that place. I'm just wondering, what is how do they use the park over there?
Could you advance the slide? Chair, members of the commission, I was hoping maybe this would show it a little better, but
Yeah,
there is an existing crosswalk at that location at London Lane. Or I'm sorry, across Lower Afton there, just to the west of London Lane. We are recommending that the applicant reviews that crossing with Ramsey County as it is their right-of-way, and have them look to see if any changes need to be made to that crossing per the county's pedestrian crossing policy. So that's one of our recommendations in our engineering.
I would recommend they put a stop sign in there too to slow the traffic down.
Well,
But it's be a Ramsey County call, right?
Right, yeah, that's a county road.
it's a county call. That's the point.
Would the applicants like to come up and show some of your slides here so we can keep moving here?
Hello, Commission Chair and fellow commissioners. Thank you for having me today. My name is Alex Bazans. I'm a partner with Real Estate Equities. I'm going to go through a brief presentation for you just to give you some background on the project and our company. Our company, Real Estate Equities, has been around since 1972. We're a St. Paul-based real estate management and development firm that specifically focuses on multifamily development and management. Throughout our company's history, we've owned, managed, and developed in excess of 70 projects comprising of over 12,000 housing units. We develop and operate all aspects of properties, and we generally do long-term ownership and management of the projects that we build. What we're proposing to build here is 148 workforce housing units. We have 72 one-bed, one-bath units, 61 two-bed, two-bath units, and 15 three-bed, two-bath units. Parking stalls on site, we have 298 total stalls, which is a 2.01 stall per unit parking ratio. Unit finishes, these are examples of other projects that we've recently built. To give you an idea of the finish levels that we do on the interior of the units, high-quality cabinetry, stainless steel appliances, hard surface countertops, luxury vinyl plank flooring. Common area finishes, again, we use similar product types, stainless steel appliances, hard surface countertops, community amenities to include large club rooms, fitness centers, et cetera. Sustainable building elements, just a highlight of this, we're going to do LED light fixtures, Energy Star rated appliances and windows, high efficiency mechanical systems, low flow water fixtures, low VOC paints and adhesives, water efficient irrigation systems. Development overview, again, unit amenities, again, solid surface countertops, stainless steel appliances. We do in-unit washer and dryer in all the units. And each floor has, each unit has 9-foot ceiling height per floor. Again, community amenities, we will have an outdoor patio with grilling stations. We will have a fitness center and a community room. Just to give you a little highlight of the variety of income levels that we'll be serving at this project, 40% of the units will be limited to 60% of the area median income rent levels, which offers a discounted rate of $300 to $400 in comparison to other comparable market rate properties in the area. One-bedroom units of the 60% units will rent at $1,103, two-bedroom units at $1,322, and three-bedroom units at $1,523. In addition to that, 35% of the units will be restricted to 80% AMI income, rented income levels. The maximum rent you can charge for the 80% AMI rents is $1,520 for a one-bedroom unit and $2,048 for a two-bedroom. We're anticipating those units will probably rent for $100 to $200, probably lower than that. But those are the max rents you can charge. The remaining units in the building, 25% of them will be unrestricted market rate units. Some of the additional benefits to the city of Maplewood, the project will provide a highly necessary mixed income housing product that will strengthen the overall new construction multifamily housing supply for the city. ESRI demographics estimated that this project will provide an increase of about $3.9 million in consumer spending within the city. And the project development budget estimates $430,000 in direct funds to the city of Maplewood through various city impact fees. And from there, I'm here to answer any questions. We also have two staff members from Cass Wilson, our architect, and two members from Sambatech, our civil engineering firm, to answer any questions that you all have.
How many people showed up to the open house?
You know, I would say probably 50 at least. I don't have a roll call of how many people showed up, but it was well attended.
Did a lot of people have lots of questions that you were able to answer and satisfy, or were there still a lot of?
You know, I think we answered a fair amount of questions. Some of them were specific to civil engineering, and we didn't have a civil engineer at the meeting to answer those questions. So that's why we brought two of our engineers, frankly, today to answer any questions that come up, because a lot of them were specific to civil engineering that we just weren't able to answer.
Okay.
I think some of you had one email that came up like that, you know. There was a guy that was asking that due to the density, to the increase in density, with your 148 units over there, I think they were canvassing for if you can provide kind of a grocery store or something like that, that they, you know, because the closest one to them is somewhere in Woodbury or something like that, yeah. Did you get that kind of question when you were doing the presentation?
I don't recall that coming up at the meeting, but we don't do any retail development, nor would we build a grocery store on the site.
Do you have a similar development in St. Paul or Minneapolis that could be used as an example of what you make? Because I saw your statistics of how many you've done, but I'm more interested in seeing, is there something local in the Twin Cities that we can see and say, oh yeah, this guy's have a...
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we've recently finished projects in Coon Rapids, Brooklyn Center. We do have projects in St. Paul as well. So yeah, we have a number of examples that we could show you. We'd be happy to facilitate, you know, a viewing of the properties if you guys want to see any of them. We can also refer you to links to the different websites for those projects as well.
I guess the name would be good so we can look it up on the, just the
Yeah,
name.
so Spring House Apartments in Coon Rapids is 168 workforce housing units. One thing I do want to mention about that project is that one is 100% affordable, where the project that we're proposing here is a mixed income project. I would say finish levels and product type that we're proposing here are definitely comparable to the high quality that we build there. The other one would be Sonder House. That's 127 units of workforce housing in Brooklyn Center. Those are our two most recent examples of projects that we just finished that I would say are comparable from a finish level and product type to what we're proposing here.
Mm-hmm. What does workforce mean?
So workforce housing is kind of a general term to describe, you know, affordable housing for the general workforce. Again, it's not super deep levels of affordable housing. The tenant population And 40% of the units here are at 60% AMI, so the income levels that those folks make are in the $20 to $25 range on those units. And then the balance of the units, again, are at 80% AMI and market rate, which are obviously higher.
Now, you continue to manage almost all your properties then, so you'll...
We do, yeah, we self-manage every property that we build.
Cheryl, John, questions? No? Well, I'm sure there probably might be, you'll be able to come up after we have the public hearing and probably answer some of those questions.
Yeah,
So-
happy to do so.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to ask that we try to limit our comments to 2 to 3 minutes. And if somebody's already spoke on the same subject, we don't need to reiterate that again. So just to make time efficient. So who would like to start and come up, and we just need you to sign your name there and your address.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, for allowing us to speak on this subject. I'd like. Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and the Commissioners, for allowing us to speak on this subject. I'd like to first start off pointing out that that was a very good discussion on surface water and the direction of the flow of the water. However, Conmera 2 is experiencing underground water. And I have not heard anything from the developers talking about that issue. There's a lot of underground water. To the south of us, there's a huge hill. High Point is one of the roads that's on that hill. We have a retention pond right on the south side of the western portion of Conmera 2. And there's you can see the drainage from that retention pond. It goes right through the division of the homes and Conmera 2. So I would like that to be considered as an open subject. The other thing I'd like.
Is that the pond you're talking about across the street?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes. And then there's really two ponds. There's a retention pond that's going to be right on the south side of the new development as well. And there's a park right next to it. And I believe this commissioner was talking about a park and a crosswalk where the new development is going to have children, because there's no restriction. A crosswalk would be good, and a stop sign would be good right there for safety, because there is a city park right there. It's a small one, but it's a very valuable resource for the community. But the other thing I'd like to talk about is the developer says they're not into retail development. But this is a community of single-family homes and owner-occupied condominiums, apartments, we call them, but they're condominium. And there's 192 of those that are in the two Conmera buildings. So all the property is owner-occupied for the most part. Now we have an island of rentals, and there's no facilities. It's like a desert. It's a food desert. The grocery store. There's no grocery stores in the area. There's nothing that the community could walk to, like I don't want to mention a brand name, but like a coffee shop, that could be open as a service for the community. And that was going to be my suggestion, that the developer think about. It's a new development, nothing's built, to put that type of facility inside their building that's open to the public. Because he said they'd have common areas, community rooms, weight rooms. Think about including the community as these renters come onto the property. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next?
Hi, I'm Paul Kinsella, and I live in Connemara 1. And I have a question. Could you put up the slide that shows the 1-foot contours on the plan where the water comes out of the north area? Those are big contours. They're 10 feet. You had one in your packet with 1-foot contours? And where it comes out, I think it's a 981 out of there. It seems like on the 1-foot contours that there's 980 all around there, and there's no where for that water to go right now. I know these 10-foot shows it, but I think on the 1-foot contours, it pockets water right there.
Chair and Commission, I don't have that specific plan that he's referring.
What's in the package?
And I can put it on if you want me to look it up on the city's website, I can pull that grading sheet up, if that's what Mr. Chair would like.
I don't know that, I guess, do we need to know that, or should we, I bring it up, I guess.
The question is,
The person is concerned about the 1 foot.
that the water is going to be stagnant at that 980 level?
Yes,
Is that
sir.
what
Yes,
you are
sir.
trying to get at?
It doesn't get to go
Towards
way.
the pond?
From what I could tell of the little, they didn't have all the contours on the part they showed us. And while he's looking that up, the one other thing, we would like a fence along our property, maybe a 6-foot high fence that they would maintain. Just we have a fountain pond that we don't want people to get into. Plus, we have the swimming pool area. I think that'll be a good divide. We're not trying to be bad neighbors.
It makes sense.
I'm pretty sure they will include that. I'm pretty
Okay,
sure.
thank you.
And then if you can sign the paper there too, then?
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
It's such a small picture there. Right where your pipe comes out there, that's all 980. And it circles back this way, right there, where your pipe is. The 980 circles back, the 980 comes this way. I think there's a little dip in the pipeline there. And I don't know what kind of grading you can do over the pipeline. That's just what I got out of looking at the drawing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
Thanks.
Through the pipeline property, is that something that the developer would have to look at the grading, or is it the pipeline folks who do the grading? How does that work?
I guess that's a question for you, Steve.
Civil engineering firm.
The civil engineering firm.
But they'd have to
We
go,
have two representatives here from Sept.
okay, they'd have to go onto the neighbor's property, though, to do that.
Chair and Commission, the pipeline and the entire easement is on the development that you're looking at's property. So,
Okay. So this is before it gets to the neighbor's property?
correct. The pipeline, the entire pipeline area is on the current fire station site.
Okay. So
So they'll be able to correct any of that then? Perfect. Okay.
Go ahead.
Good evening, and thank you for your time. My name is Mike Talby, and I live directly across the street from where this project is going to be. I've got a number of concerns. I'm just going to hit some highlights so other people have a chance to speak. This building, in my opinion, is going to be too large. There's going to be, if you get 2 people per bedroom, which is what they're allowed, up to 500 people living in this development, up to 300 additional cars coming and going every day on London Lane, which might be zoned for that kind of traffic, but does not have the infrastructure in it. As far as multi-use housing developments go, right across McKnight Road in Lower Afton are several apartment buildings. Directly across from Conn-America are townhouses. Then there's Conn-America, and directly across Century and Woodbury is a 400 to 500 unit apartment building. This area does not need more multi-level housing. It's not built for it. The infrastructure is just not there. And my concerns are also with the height of the building, light shining directly into my backyard, and also my property value, I think, will go down. The property looks beautiful in its beginning sketches, but when you bring in 500 people, 300 cars coming and going, I think it's just bound to bring down my property values. Thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sarah Hall. You may all have read my letter that is already in your packets. I live at 2445 London Lane. Thanks, Mr. Chairman and the Commissioners, for holding this public meeting tonight. I'd like to address the traffic plan that has been developed. I would like to point out that Connemara 1 is a 55-plus building, and Connemara 2 has a very similar population structure to Connemara 1, although it is not a 55-plus building. And I think that adding up to 500 people who are active in the workforce and have families will most definitely significantly increase the traffic on London Lane. There are no sidewalks, and I doubt very much that both sides, the shoulders on both sides are 5 feet wide. I walk my dog there regularly. It's barely wide enough for me and my dog together, and she's 30 pounds. As to the property values, I concur with the neighbor who just spoke. I was lucky enough to get a spreadsheet from Mr. Bizantz yesterday evening detailing some of the existing properties he has in the Twin Cities, and I just didn't have much time, but I did some Zillow searches. And while his assertion that he made at the last meeting is true, that property values in the surrounding neighborhoods where he has current developments have increased over the years, they have, based on my research, increased less than houses which are located further away from his developments, suggesting to me that his developments do, at least very locally, depress property values for the neighboring properties. And as to the water, since this diagram is still up, Connemara 1 has long-faced, and Connemara 2 have both long-faced water intrusion issues from groundwater and from surface water. Our building has spent in the last 40 years since its development upwards of $300,000 trying to mitigate our water issues. I know that Connemara 1 had pooling water in their garage, 2 to 4 inches deep, for which they installed a sump pump in the last 10 years. Perhaps one of the neighbors from that building can speak to what was done there. And anything that can be done to mitigate the water flowing into and onto the Connemara properties is much appreciated, and we very much appreciate your making sure that no additional water flows onto our properties. Thank you very much.
Which one is one closer or two closer?
Connemara 1 is the one directly adjacent to the new development, and Connemara 2 is more to the west. Any other questions?
Oh, thanks. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, I'm Lyle Puppy, and I live in 2445 London Lane, which is Connemara 2. I have a question for the commission. How many of you have been to our location? How many of you actually been on London Lane? I know I realize we're in the southern suburb of the city of Maplewood here, but you should come down and see us so you know what we're talking about. When was the traffic study done?
Chair and Commission, just as a point of order, the speaker directs the chair, and the chair, you direct questions to us.
Okay.
Okay.
So I guess the question is that you, Steve, that would know when the study was completed?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, it was completed after the application was submitted to the city. The date of the memo itself is September 9th.
Okay.
September.
The study done, was it done for days, weeks, or a weekend, or what?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, so with this particular traffic study, we used existing traffic counts that we had on the roads for the existing traffic volumes. And then we modeled what the estimated traffic count, extra traffic trips would be once that site is developed.
And there's a book that calculates all that out, right?
That's correct.
Yep.
The comment was made by a previous speaker, I think, about retail or something. Guess where we shop? We shop in Woodbury.
That's what I thought.
My point is, yes, there should be something down there for retail. Whether it's here or, whether it's in this development or where it should be, but we should have something other than going down to what we got on McKnight Road, which is not suitable at all. Property values, they might increase our values. That's my opinion. We could decrease theirs because our buildings are old. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Bill Barrett. My bedroom window looks out on the row of parking spots on the left edge. So I'm real interested in this project. I submitted to staff an idea about a berm in front of those parking spots and then a fence on top of the berm. In Mike's description earlier, he didn't really say what was going to happen about that. And I know you guys don't know that, but I'd like to know.
I think you can.
I'd like to know what he said to the people who proposed to build this. And what do you guys think? Are you going to approve this thing? It doesn't matter what I say to you? Or would it actually make a difference that I wrote this and proposed a pretty specific berm because of the light of the cars pulling in and out of the driveway, which will shine in my bedroom window?
What we could do,
so of course I care a lot.
I think what we could do is we could have one of the civil engineers come up and talk about the berm, which I'm pretty sure is pretty unlikely because of the drainage. But I think a fence.
No, it'd help the drainage.
Chair and Commission, just as Mr. Barnett's comments were included with your staff report today, so they were accepted and moved on as committed by us on staff side. And then what I relayed to you during the presentation are what the ordinance minimums for what the developer has to abide by.
Okay.
So you've been given that information and can do that in terms of recommendations, what the Planning Commission desires tonight.
Perfect.
So is it practical for you guys to change that and say they have to build a berm there? I described how long, how high it need to be. It would help with the light from the parking lot, people going in and out. It would help with the drainage.
I guess, from my understanding, is there's minimums and things that they have to fulfill, and they can't completely designate everything on the property that's done to the builder. They can make suggestions, but they can't tell the builder, you have to do such and such unless it's within the code. Does that make sense?
It's not a very good way to build a railroad.
Well, we are not building the
I mean,
railroad here.
come on. If they can do whatever they want and you're sticking with the minimum requirements, I'm going to have flashing headlights in and out of my bedroom every night. And I don't think you need to do that to me.
I understand where you're coming from.
But there is a city ordinance that requires screening, which is already listed in here.
Right, that they're going to put a fence.
Screening should help the lights from going into his bedroom windows.
Right.
That's really the essence of this statement in here, that the builder will be doing that.
Who was asked, right.
Right.
Did anybody else? Did anybody else like to come up?
My name is Gary Fuller, and I've been on the corner of Mary and Sterling for 40 years. Got large concerns about security with this project. I know when the fire station was open and we used to have the police hang out there in the parking lot, things are going good. Ever since that place closed down and the police don't hang down in the parking lot so much, we've had more break-ins, attempted break-ins, since the police aren't there. Also, any chance of partnering up with St. Paul on developing the Hillcrest Golf Course that's been closed now for about 8, 10 years or whatever, putting something like that up there? That's 18 holes up there of land that's become nothing but an eyesore as you go up McKnight. I think you could maybe look at something like that. This project here could fit in real nice up at Hillcrest. It's already brought up to me last time at this meeting we had back on the 26th about the ponds closing, and that was all on Ramsey County's decision and all that. The point is, ponds has closed. What's going to happen with that land? And again, that's all on Ramsey County. Nobody here has any decision on that. I mean, it's all Ramsey County. What my concern is, what's going to happen with that land now that it's not going to be a golf course? More housing, more projects like this? I mean, where's the vision here? I mean, are we trying to turn in South Maplewood into like Minneapolis, St. Paul? Or are we going to kind of get like Woodbury or Lake Elmo? I mean, like I say, I've been there 40 years. When I first moved out there, very impressed. Over the last 5 to 10 years, very poor, very poor. I cut across the street from me is where the pond is. You've got utilities on the corner. If I don't weed whip that area, grass grows about 2 feet high. I'm not getting paid by any people to do that. I shouldn't do it, but such an eyesore. I mean, it seems like our area down there has become more neglected, yet our taxes still stay up there nice and high. So definitely have some concerns here, where the vision is going here. And like I say, Hillcrest Golf Course, I think is a good area to put this project.
Thank you for your suggestion. Anybody else? Anybody else? Last and
You mentioned having an engineer come up?
yeah, I'm just gonna close the public hearing, then I'll have him come up. So, is it?
Then I won't be able to comment.
That's probably
If you
true.
only speak at public hearing, I can't talk after he talks.
Okay.
Let him come on.
So let's have the civil engineer guy come up once and maybe explain the grading thing there and kind of satisfied that, that you will be putting up a fence, but not no berm, and kind of explain the.
Good evening, Chairman, Commissioners. My name is Josh McKinney. I'm with Sambatech, a civil engineering consultant retained by Real Estate Equities. My role is actually I'm a professional landscape architect, so the person that's kind of in charge of addressing some of these screening concerns that are brought up by Mr. Barrett. So I certainly appreciate Mr. Barrett's comment. One of the challenges with the site relative to the screening is really the kind of what we're able to do and what we're not able to do within the gas easement. Magellan has very specific requirements in terms of grade modifications over that area. So with this site, one of the things that we're still working through is coordination of landscaping within the easement area. We are absolutely committed to meeting the city requirements regarding the screening that are in the city code, but I cannot commit to anything further until we have further conversations with Magellan.
Okay.
Good evening, I'm Brian Frank, civil engineer on this project. So the couple things that stuck out to me that I heard tonight are, one, subsurface runoff, okay? And Our geotechnical engineers on this project have identified groundwater on our site, and they are running more tests to determine how extensive that problem is for us. But I think probably the more important thing is probably with regard to the stormwater pond that's in the northwest corner of the site, okay? And I think staff did a really good job of making the distinction that this is a filtration pond and not an infiltration pond. And so any water that's collected on our property, on our site, from the roofs, from the parking lots, from the landscape areas, all gets drained to this pond and will seep through this filter media, and it will not get into the subsurface. It will not infiltrate into the ground. So the pond itself won't be contributing to groundwater. It'll be filtering through into drain tile and then discharged overland to the adjacent property to the north, which is currently kind of where it discharges today. And like they pointed out, the point discharge from the fire station today is being moved north significantly. So that surface runoff is being directed away from the neighboring property as well. And then the other thing that I heard was with regard to the flared end the flared end that's coming out of the pond, and that is designed above existing grade right now, and therefore it should still drain as it does today. Anything else? Did I miss something, Josh?
So do you think that whatever you're doing on this site will not create any more hydrostatic pressure of any water to be any greater than it is now?
I'm not a geotechnical engineer, so I cannot comment on that.
Okay.
I think that is, that analysis is being done by our geotechnical engineer, and we'll have those findings, in time. But I cannot comment on that right now. I can comment that I believe that the stormwater management plan that we have developed is a net benefit to the site. And overall, stormwater management.
So if you're saying that you cannot comment on the geotechnical report, we approve this saying, but then we find out that there is hydrostatic pressure and there is an issue that could also flow into the neighborhood, where do we stand? That's the part that maybe the city folks can answer for me, because I'm not getting a complete response here.
The geotechnical aspect is reviewed at the building permit, and there's standards that have to be met.
Okay.
And minimums, and so those are, that's a black and white issue when you get to the building permit point. So they're either met or they're not. And so we would only issue a permit once all standards have been met.
Okay, perfect.
Just to add on that, from our perspective, our conversations with Real Estate Equities to date, there's no real interest to provide significant mitigation measures within our building footprint to accommodate a high groundwater table. So really what we're looking at is getting a recommendation from the geotechnical engineer in terms of how to best proceed with the groundwater levels once they're stabilized within the testing. So we're just trying to determine where we're at. We don't have the information on the static groundwater level at this point in time, but we'll get that in time.
Okay.
So question for the city is, when information like this is not brought forward yet because they are looking into it, what's the purpose of us approving this if there is an issue?
Chair and Commission, you're looking at the rezoning of the site and a conditional use permit for building height.
Okay.
At the building permit, just like you don't review if a building meets building code, it's a similar standard.
Okay.
That's what the building official's role is, to make that determination.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's not for us.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And
Chairs, members of the commission, I do want to point out that a filtration pond also is considered a dry pond. So it is not a pond that collects water and holds it indefinitely. It will draw down and then be a dry surface at a specific point once that water is soaked in through the filter media and then is discharged through the drain tile underneath. So it is not a pond that'll collect water and hold it indefinitely there.
So essentially, a summer like we just had, where it was very dry, you could see that pond being pretty dry. is what you're saying.
Chairs, member of the commission, yes. If you think of it like our rain gardens in the city.
Yep.
A lot of them are, you will gather that water and they'll have it for a period of time, and then it'll soak through that media. And that's what is similar to this situation, so.
Yeah.
Did you, one last comment? If you had one last comment, yeah. I guess the public hearing is still open. You have to come up here.
Come on up.
Yes.
It's just a quick question. My name is Susie Kaitis. I'm in Connemara 2. And I'm wondering, are any of you hydrologists? Do you have a hydrologist in Maplewood? It sounds like a stupid question, but the water problem back there is a big issue. And there's creeks and there's wetlands behind us already. And there's little labels. I've walked back there and it says wetland. So if you're going to be building and all this water is going back there, I don't know where it's going. It's never been dry. So, I mean, I would love a hydrologist to be in there to go over this situation because it's not going to get better. And also the height of the building, I don't care about that. I don't like it over the height. I don't want it to stand out like a sore thumb. And I think that's about it. But the wetlands, it is declared a wetland back there. And I would like a hydrologist to look at that. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm Rob Barbosa. I would just like to invite all the commissioners to go back into city records because I've seen photographs from the city, what the land looked like 42 and 48 years ago. It was a wetland. And Connemara 1 and Connemara 2 were built on a wetland. That's similar to where this apartment's going, where the fire station is, and the blank or the empty land between the fire station and Connemara 1. It might be dry now, but there's a lot of groundwater. I'd just like you to go back and look at history that you have already before you make a consideration of approving this project. Thank you.
Thanks. Anybody else? Close it. One more time. Anybody else? Last call. Okay. Public hearing is closed then. Anybody else have any other questions for staff or anything?
I don't.
I don't.
So the main thing.
Good? Yeah.
Mike, is that only in Gladstone and the Maplewood Mall that we have the restrictions on the heights of buildings?
Chair and Commission, the standard that you're looking at tonight is a citywide standard for anything zoned R3. I know as part of the North End zoning district, which has not been adopted yet, and the mixed-use district that is adopted in Gladstone immediate, there's some different height standards. But again, R3 throughout the city is the same standard. A building over 35 feet is not prohibited. It just triggers that conditional use permit. And during the CDRB meeting, the applicant can speak better to it. Like, they could do a flat roof, but they wanted to match the pitch of the residential roofs in this neighborhood.
Right. Okay. Public hearing's closed. I'm sorry.
So let's move on.
So we're just mainly looking at changing it from farm to...
Farm to R3 and then motion to approve a resolution for a conditional use permit. Those are the only two things, so.
And they're separate, right?
Right. As Michael pointed out, the rest of these issues are something not in our purview to.
Right, we were just trying to satisfy people that the answers.
Not in the purview.
You know.
Right.
No, not at all.
Correct.
So I'd like to make a motion.
Make the motion then?
No, go ahead.
Oh, I guess they're waiting for
Oh,
you.
you want me to make a motion? Well, I'd like to make a motion to approve an ordinance amending the city zone map to rezone the property from F farm residence to R3 multiple dwelling. And then the second one too, right?
There would be separate votes,
Yeah,
right?
excuse me?
Separate votes.
And then the second vote, motion to approve a resolution for,
Do the first one, then we'll do the second one.
okay, let's do
Yeah.
the first one.
Yep, second.
By Allen, second by Deshar. And this is on the changing the zoning, right?
Yeah, changing the zoning.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Cheryl, no?
I know just because I recognize that it's in our comprehensive land use plan for 2040, but just based on what was brought up, I question the suitability of this site, and so I don't feel like I have enough information to understand if this site would be appropriate for highest.
What was the question?
She said no, that she didn't believe that there was enough information.
Oh.
Okay, the second part?
Motion to approve a resolution for a conditional use permit.
There's been a motion by Allen, second by
Me again?
Deshar.
Can you speak up a little bit on what the heck you're saying up there? You know, what are we motioning and all this stuff?
Okay, the first motion was on to change the zoning to a farm to an
From farm to residential,
R3.
R3.
Okay.
You're gonna change, rezone it anyway, even though you've got all these objections and you don't have all your ducks in a row yet, you're gonna go and rezone it anyway.
Yes.
What are we even here for?
Yeah.
To put your input in.
Yeah, but obviously it didn't mean anything.
Well, you haven't voted on the other one yet.
And the other one is the conditional use permit. The conditional use permit will permit them to build that kind of buildings over there because, yeah, based on the city ordinance.
Doesn't seem like they have all the information yet before you're going to rezone anything.
Well, this is the limit of the planning.
Okay, we can't have these discussions back and forth. Okay. There's been a motion and a second by Deshar. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Nay?
I feel like yes, nay, based on my first.
So it's nay?
Yes.
Yes.
So 1, 2, 3 nays.
3 nays?
So motion failed.
Okay.
Motion failed.
That's what will go forward to the city then.
Chair and Commission, you do have an opportunity to make a motion that would deny the request and provide more rationale. If one of those individuals that voted nay to the motion, there is an opportunity to make a new motion that would be more clear to the council what the planning commission's intent is.
I think the reasoning behind my no is because they haven't completely come to the conclusion about the what they're going to do with their water for sure.
So Paul, I would recommend that you make a recommendation or a motion summarizing that and put it to a vote.
Yeah.
Okay, I make a motion that the developer have all the documents about the hydrostatic water and the, whatever the other terms are, prior to giving the approval. Does that make sense?
You're
guys
seeking a
wanna
second.
second it?
I'll second that motion. Is it a motion by me, second by John? All those in favor?
Aye. Okay, so our motion failed, so we are now re-voting again,
Okay.
okay?
So, and you, or aye or a nay?
Nay.
Nay, okay. So it's 4 to 1, okay. So, do they understand what's going on over there?
No, you can't come
So,
up now.
Chair and Commission, you've made a recommendation, and it's been voted in the affirmative. It'll be forwarded to the city council at this point. And the city council makes that final decision on every request that the developer is making.
Okay, I think they're kind of confused there, though.
We can circle back with them. Jeff Thompson, our community development director, can meet with them out in the hall, but you've made your motion, and so we're that's,
Okay.
you've taken that vote, and it goes to the city council on October 25th at this time.
And just for the record, I want to make it clear that when I made a second and an approval for the conditional use permit, it is based on the grounds that the planning commission is being asked to look at that conditional use permit as only, because that's what our purview is.
That's right.
Things like this water, which I have a big concern about when it's flooding in the next door neighbor, as to what's going to happen here. But unfortunately, that's not within our span of recommendation. That really is still residing with the city staff, and therefore, that is my reason for agreeing to second it and voting for it, because we do have to kind of separate ourselves as a planning commission to look at what's for zoning and things like that, ordinances, rather than just making the whole general picture. That hopefully maybe city council can even look at it and decide if they want to go forward or not.
But you just voted though for.
I did, because I still would like to see more information.
Okay,
That's not out of the question. My main reason for the first one to approve was of what our responsibilities are and what we need to be responsible for as presenters and authorizers of this conditional use permit.
Okay.
Well, on that note, I'm very, very sure that the city council will understand that our limitations in terms of recommendations to be given to them, that this is only is within the purview of the planning commission for the conditional use permit. There's one thing to permit, there's another thing to evaluate the practical part of it, which is of which water level and other stuff is conditional. You know,
Right.
So there are two different things, and the other one is not within our purview.
Right. Well, this is actually just our recommendation. This still goes before the city, and the city will make their final decision. You guys understand that?
Yeah.
The developers? That this is just our recommendation. So this will go before the city, and the city will make the final decision, but they.
The city council will.
That's very clear. I'm just not so clear on the new motion, but I can take that because the CUP and the groundwater are unrelated.
Okay. So maybe I was out of line?
Chair and Commission, you made a motion, it was voted on, so that's what we'll bring forward. You know, that's all we need to say from the staff point of view.
Yep.
I don't want to do something that's not right either. I guess I'm assuming that we didn't have the full documents to give the CUP is what we were kind of teetering on, weren't we?
Chair, I can't answer that question for you. That's your motivation.
It's not within our purview.
It's our motion.
Okay.
He's just the facilitator.
That's all right. The CUP is out of this place.
Okay, let's move on.
Let's move on.
Okay, we are at number 3, the American Cooperative on Lake Fallon, 1875 East Shore Drive, a conditional use permit.
Yep, thank you, Chair and Commission. Our next item on the agenda is a new 60-unit senior housing cooperative building. This is proposed to be located on vacant land on East Shore Drive, again at 1875. This site is 2.14 acres in size. To move forward, the applicant is requesting approval of a conditional use permit for shoreland planned unit development and preliminary plat and final plat. That's what's before your group tonight, these two items. The CDRB, Community Design Review Board, met earlier and reviewed the design review and recommended approval. The current controls for the property, it's currently guided by the 2040 Comprehensive Plan as high-density residential. It is zoned R3 multiple dwelling. Applicant is proposing to use density credits as permitted and encouraged within the city ordinance. This provides additional square footage to the site for underground parking, so each space that's underground receives a bonus, and each unit that's on the 4th floor or higher, this is a 4-story building, so just the 4th floor, also gets a bonus. And so that will add 0.69 acres to the site size, and that provides that consistency with the 25 units max with the high-density residential designation that's found in the 2040 comprehensive plan. So again, both the proposed use, the proposed use both meets the 2040 comprehensive plan requirements and the requirements of the R3 multiple dwelling district for use. Because this is a plan unit development within a shoreland area that encourages a unified site design and offers the ability for flexibility in certain zoning requirements. Because of the shape of the size, there's a couple different pitch points that come into play here. The one on the most northern west circle, there's the series of decks that just the corner of that portion of the decks themselves do not meet the 20-foot setback. The building itself, the living space, does meet that 20-foot setback. And then there's a couple areas as you head south along that west property line where a handful of parking spaces are set back 18 feet instead of the required 20. And the drive lane further south is 18 feet as well instead of the required 20. And then staff is comfortable with those flexibility standards on the 3 circles on the west, given, again, the shape of the size is a unique situation, the shape of the parcel is a unique situation that's affecting this parcel. And also considering that the property to the west is non-conforming parking space as well, and then it's a garage building that's most adjacent to the parking areas on the 2 south circles. And then the northwest corner circle for the decks is in an undevelopable area to the west. So we do not feel that those setbacks will have any negative consequences. And then on the east side of the building, the applicant is looking to have a canopy that would go 21 feet from the setback or from the front property line. The building itself is meeting that 30-foot setback. The building itself is meeting all setback requirements, but the canopy would come within 9 feet of that front property line. And East Shore Drive itself has a larger than typical right-of-way, and so that's one other consideration that staff felt comfortable providing this flexibility. Looking at the building heights, again, as we discussed in the last item, anytime a building is over 35 feet or 4 stories, it needs approval by the city council and with review by the planning commission. This is a flat roofed proposed building, 4 stories tall. It's from the grade to the flat part of the roof is just over 44.5 feet. There is some grade differences that will push that up at points to just under 54 feet. And it just pulled a couple different projects that occurred recently in the neighborhood, more closer to the Frost English intersection. The multifamily building that most fronts Frost, that was built with a 41-foot. And again, those have pitched roofs, so that's measured to the midpoint of that roof. So that height actually goes higher than the 41 feet. And then the senior building that's just behind that building goes up to 53 feet, again with a pitched roof, so it goes higher. So just providing context for other multifamily buildings that have been built in this general neighborhood to show what's been done from a height standpoint. A couple other areas we don't have. We, as the city of Maplewood, have concrete patio setbacks per se, but the applicant is proposing to have a concrete patio directly east of the building that would fall within 8 feet of the front property line, and then that south circle patio on the southernmost point of the parcel would fall at points to the front property line. It would be approximately 13 feet from the front property line, and then to the south and east, it would be 8 feet. And then there would also be a pergola within that area. And then the shoreline PUD has a requirement of 50% open space. The site itself does not meet that standard. It would be approximately 40% undeveloped at the end of the day. But the same shoreline ordinance provides the ability for the applicant to get a 20% impervious surface bonus with additional stormwater management practices as approved by the city engineers. So with those, and that's above and beyond the baseline requirements of stormwater management. They have to do more to be able to have that extra 20% of impervious surface. And then doing those things in coordination would meet the ordinance requirements. So we would want to memorialize the building height, the setback adjustments, concrete patios, and the open space within this PUD that's before you tonight. One other item, there is a wetland, a managed B wetland to the west. It's not on the property itself, but it's to the west. That wetland has a minimum 75-foot buffer, but you can come within 50 foot of that wetland as long as you're averaging 75 feet throughout the entire buffer area. So there are points where the grading will come in within 50 feet of that wetland buffer, but it does average out to equate to that 75 feet. And both the engineering and environmental planner have reviewed this, and the applicant's site and grading plans do meet city requirements.
Isn't that to the east?
No, the wetland is shown in the green. That's
Oh,
to the
green,
west.
okay, I'm sorry. I was seeing the blue.
So is the canopy considered part of the building?
I'm sorry, say that again, Mr.
The
Egan?
canopy, is it considered part of the building?
Again, Chair and Commission, the canopy itself doesn't have a specific setback that's specifically defined in our code, just the building itself is. But we wanted it memorialized in the PUD so that everyone has the same expectation of where that canopy can go and how far out from the building it can go. And then the second aspect that you'll be looking at tonight is a preliminary and final plat request. This site was originally part of the parcel to the north, the shores at Lake Phalen. When that project went through, this site was subdivided specifically for future development. In fact, that property line was adjusted that used to be under common ownership to make sure that development worked on both sides. And when this was subdivided, it was deemed an outlot. That's a typical development practice, so that when the lot is being prepared for development, the city can ensure that all minimum lot design standards are met and that the lot is indeed developable. Those standards have been met, and it is a developable lot, so staff is recommending that the preliminary and final plats be approved to remove that outlot status. Earlier tonight, as I mentioned, the CDRB looked at design review, but I'll walk through the items here so you have the full picture of the project. They did recommend approval. The site would be accessed by a single drive off of East Shore Drive. You can see to the south of the building. The building itself would run along propose the front East Shore Drive and run along the north boundary of the site. And then the surface parking lot would be positioned to the south and west of the building. Again, here are the list of building materials that would be used. These were also included in your packet along with the building elevations. All floor area requirements are being met. So again, the unit size minimums for number of bedrooms each unit would be. And then a revised photometric plan would be required to be submitted to staff before any building permits are issued. The applicant has a small area that's not compliant with our code standards, so staff would recommend that be revised. Looking at parking, same as the last project, 2 spots per each unit for multifamily buildings, with one of those parking spots at least being covered. This project requires 120 spaces. The applicant's providing 130, 95 in an underground garage, and 35 in a single surface lot. Looking at the landscaping plan, the applicant is removing 75 trees and planting 145 new trees. This does not quite meet the tree replacement requirements, so the applicant would be required to submit a revised landscaping plan to add either 25.5 caliber inches, either through additional trees or bigger trees, or pay into the city's tree fund. Either option is allowed by code. In addition to trees, numerous shrubs, perennials, and grasses are being planted throughout the site. Much like the last project, we are looking for code compliance with screening from the headlight glare, kind of looking mostly in this area where there's a turning movement and parking spaces facing. Again, this is a garage building over here, and then the existing multifamily unit building is down here. So we're just wanting to make sure, again, that the applicant is meeting the screening requirements before any permits are issued.
Mm-hmm.
Comprehensive sign plan is required because of a planned unit development. Applicant's plans indicate one monument sign. The comprehensive sign plan will require that the sign would be located on the property and set back at least 10 feet from all property lines. City sent 20 property owners a neighborhood survey, and that went out. Then the city sent another letter noticing the public hearing that's about to occur. We received one reply that was included with your staff report. I did receive one additional letter. The deadline for submittal was last Monday to be able to get into your packet tonight. And so late last week, I received another letter that the applicant has received too and can address as well. That will be included with the staff report to the city council. And just because it was brought up at the beginning of tonight's meeting, I'll just, we send those 20 property owners. That's because of that 500-foot radius that is in code. That's what staff is directed to by code, to send property owners within 500 feet. The state statute is 350 feet. So City of Maplewood has taken upon itself to add an additional 150 feet to notice more. I did a quick rundown when the shores at Lake Phelan was noticed in 2010. It captured 27 properties. The Frost English project on Frost and English, 62 properties. Century Trails up by Costco, 111. It just shows there's a range, and you saw the project tonight was over 200. It really depends on the density that's already there and the land use patterns all around. What staff wants in the end is objective, consistent standards. We don't want to be put in a position that we're making decisions for one project over another because there's always going to be a line where someone will be noticed and someone won't be noticed. And so again, the standard that we've been given by city ordinance is 500 feet. So with that, staff is recommending approval of the conditional use permit for a Shoreland planned unit development resolution and the preliminary plat and final plat resolution. The applicant is present, can answer questions directly from the commission prior to your public hearing. And with that, staff can stand for questions now.
Is that the same developer that owns both properties, or did they sell that property?
Chair and commission originally was, so the developer or the property owner that developed the land to the north is selling this land to the applicant tonight. They no longer have a property ownership interest in the shores at Lake Phelan.
Okay.
What is that on attachment 9? Is that a penthouse or what it is?
Commissioner Iggy, on which attachment?
9. E39.
E9?
Yeah, no, attachment 9.
Attachment 9, okay. And so I'm Chair and Commissioner, I'm looking at the building elevations from each side. What specific?
I'm looking at is that a party room up there or a penthouse or what is it?
Yeah, Chair and Commission, the applicant can speak more to it. They do have a rooftop deck that they would propose, as you probably have gathered. And this is, again, goes in also part two of the city's consideration of the open space requirement. It's right next to Lake Phelan, regional parks, city park in St. Paul, lots of recreational amenities in that area. And so I believe that the applicant can speak better to it, but they would like to take advantage of that location.
You're not allowed because you're not a resident.
I don't think so. I mean, I didn't see any description of it in the paper, that's why. Okay, we go. All right.
Any questions, staff? John?
Thank you very much for your clarification of the 500-foot and how that's done. It just seemed to be quite a contrast between the two properties that seem to be somewhat similar in regards to multi-dwelling and the dramatic difference in regards to community, as is obvious by the audience in regards to how many people were actually aware of this much prior to this meeting. I have a question in regards to this planning board and how we interact with the Environmental and Natural Resources Board in regards to when we have these issues that involve natural resources like wetlands and that, why these proposals don't somehow go through that board as part of this process. Because I find this project very much like that because you're very close to Lake Phelan. You also have this wetlands. And as you mentioned, we're by the regional park, that there looks like there should be more of a comprehensive view of natural resources to put input into this for the city council. That seems to be a step that would be helpful and not hinder this. And maybe to get back to Member Iggy's thought of, we're just supposed to act on the CPU, but most of the meeting prior to this and some elements of this meeting really get down to what the natural resources are, what's the environmental impact. And I think that sometimes might be a good way to look at processing this in the future, or processing these two projects, to maybe think about getting input from that board.
Chair and Commission, just one thing on the notification process. All projects or all public hearings are also noticed in the city newspaper, which is the St. Paul Pioneer Press. So that's not location specific. Those are put in on Fridays for the city of Maplewood. And then for the environmental review, so the Environmental and Natural Resources Commission review ordinances. They worked on the wetland ordinance, the tree ordinance. And so staff is directed to implement those ordinances. If there was a wetland buffer variance, it would go to the Environmental Natural Resources Commission for a recommendation. They are meeting the requirements of that, so that step is not required based on codes. So I appreciate the feedback, and the city council will be made aware of the minutes of this meeting, and you have Councilmember Bill Knutson, who is your liaison, so he'll hear those comments as well. But again, unless there's an issue with the environmental review, the ENR does not get involved in the process of processing land use applications.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yes, and again, a comprehensive element of how this project might affect East Shore Drive in regards to public works, and again, that element of recreational area with some issues on East Shore Drive with the Ramsey County Park Trail and East Shore Drive being very close just down the street from there, and there's already a big traffic problem with pedestrians, bikes, and cars using a very narrow corridor there, and I could just see that corridor being more used with this development and have we give due consideration to the improvements on East Shore Drive that are planned for the future?
Chair and Commission, perhaps Mr. Love has specific comments on improvements that might be planned for that road, but what I can say, bigger picture from this project and the last project too, quite frankly, is when we're not looking at comprehensive plan designation changes for either project. Those have already been in place. As part of that comprehensive plan process, there's a transportation chapter that is also developed that is directly derived from your land use plan. So there is coordination going on when the city says high density development is expected in this site. That traffic chapter has also been developed to ensure that can be supported. So the comprehensive plan is comprehensive, right? And so it's looking at not just land use, but it's looking at water resources, transportation, park amenities, and they're all talking to each other. So if the city has designated high density, then that work has been done to show that, yes, the transportation network is in place. I can't speak to specific timing on anything that might be occurring with East Shore Drive, and Mr. Love has anything to add to that?
Chairs, members of the commission, so East Shore Drive is a project that we would look to see within the next 5 years. I believe I'm trying to remember the year that we moved it to. We had to move the project out, I think, to 2023 because of the fact that there were going to be several projects all in the same location happening at once, and people weren't going to be able to get anywhere. With the pedestrian and bicycle facilities and our Living Streets policy, we always look at that with every one of our street projects, so we do look at what improvements might be needed. I will note that around the lake itself, there is a pedestrian, bike, and trail already, which a lot of times when we're looking at roads, we don't have that in place already, and we're looking at how can we add that feature in. So there is pedestrian bicycle facilities along East Shore Drive adjacent to the lake there. But again, like I said, when we do a street improvement project, we always look at our Living Streets policy and look at what pedestrian and facilities might be needed.
Okay.
In regards to the height, the topography there, that's kind of a fairly dramatic slope. So are we really leveling that slope off in regards to the measurements?
Chair and Commission, there's definitely grading occurring on the site. I think I would recommend directing that question directly to the applicant and design team to answer that.
Thank you.
They're gonna build a funhouse and make it on the slope.
What's that?
They're gonna build a funhouse and make it on the slope.
Would you like me to address that question?
Yes, yes.
Sure, that'd be
go ahead.
fine, thank you.
So, thank you. My name is Mick Conlon. I'm the president of Gramercy Development Companies, the developer of the American Cooperative. We are going to be removing a good portion of the fill that constitutes the mound, if you will, on that site. There's some bad soils there that need to be removed. So we'll be knocking down the overall height of the site. Kathleen, do you know the exact? I would say roughly between 6 to 8 feet, bringing that mound down, and then building the building on top of that. And that's, again, due to the fill that's currently on the site. It used to be a recreational manufactured home community, and that was basically some weekend camping that took place there as well for a while. So a lot of that was pushed and buried on site. So we need to remove that fill and get down to good soils before we can start building.
I thought it was a trailer park.
Nomenclature. Right. And I'd be happy to just tell you a little bit about who we are and why we're excited about this site too. Otherwise, of course, to answer your questions.
Sure,
but,
go ahead.
thank you. So again, Mick Conlon, Gramercy Development. We're really excited to be bringing this cooperative model to Maplewood. This will be our second project that our company has done the American Cooperative concept. Gramercy is a family company that was started by my dad back in the 1990s, and obviously I work with my sister Kathleen on this model, and we're excited to be bringing that here. The co-op model, it's an ownership model for seniors. So the seniors in Maplewood who aren't interested in maybe renting and want to continue to have a piece of the American dream, if you will, this is a perfect opportunity for them. They become owners in a not-for-profit company, so they become share owners. There'll be 60 shares, 60 units within the building. And as share owners, they own a piece of the company. There's no third-party landlord who's involved. There's a professional management company who's there to manage the building on their behalf. But all the decisions that are reached on their behalf by them as members of the board or as members at large. So there's some interesting benefits to it as the company owns the entire building. So in a condo situation, as a lot of the folks in the audience here tonight know, in a condo you own kind of the four walls of your unit. Here the cooperative owns everything. They own within your unit, actually own the appliances within your unit, the flooring within your unit, the underground parking. And so if any of those items need to be replaced over time, that's taken care of by the cooperative. There's no assessments, so there's reserves that are built in up front to cover issues that might arise with, warranty issues or water, what have you, that might arise. That's all taken care of ahead of time and built into the reserves. So it's a real predictable model for seniors. And these are really popular buildings. If you're to call around to any cooperatives that have been built, they have hundreds of people that are on the wait list to move into those buildings. So it's a very popular model for seniors. Just a couple other things that I'll just mention. These shares appreciate at a fixed amount per year, so they're not subject to the market ups and downs. So people don't have to worry about buying into this and maybe they're the home values will collapse. The shares appreciate at a fixed percent of 3% per year, compounded. So over time, these actually remain affordable for folks into the future. So what you're doing as we kind of move forward with this project is you're creating affordable home ownership for seniors on Lake Phalen for decades, which is not something that you can say every day. So it's a pretty unique model. Just a couple features. We noted the 1.5 underground parking. That's one of the big things that we heard on our first project is that people wanted to make sure if they were going to downsize from their single-family home, they wanted to be able to park underground. They didn't want to give up their second car. So we tried to make sure that we accommodated that here. Of course, we're in between two golf courses, regional parks. That's the other big takeaway that we got from our first project is our seniors want to be close to outdoor amenities And this is exactly what that site offers. So this is a real great opportunity to create real valuable home ownership right at Lake Phelan and take advantage of these regional parks. We'll, of course, have a club room, a billiards room, the rooftop penthouse, as you mentioned. It's really more of a just an outdoor viewing area of Lake Phelan for folks to watch the sunset and spend time with family up there.
Is that member only?
Pardon me?
Is that member only?
I'm sorry.
Owners only.
Owners only, yes, I'm sorry. It's for owners only. They can invite, of course, their guests up there, but, and then we have this pergola area down on the southern end of the site to, again, just allow some outdoor space at the site. It's a very tight site, especially when you factor in the topography, so that's one of the challenges that we have with this site, but we think we've done a really good job designing it, so we're really excited. Any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
This is your first building in Maplewood, right?
Yes, sir. Our first project was in Anoka. It's an 87-unit building. It just started construction this month. We spent about a year pre-selling that. We have a pre-sale requirement because HUD does insure this mortgage. There's a requirement that we pre-sell 60% before we can break ground. So we'll be doing that here as well. And we hit our pre-sale numbers and broke ground. We've, at the time of breaking ground, actually moving dirt, we had pre-sold 75% of the building. So I estimate that'll be the same case here. I think this building will do really well given all of the great amenities that are right outside the doorstep for people.
So you're pre-saling only to owner residents? People can't buy those and make them into Airbnbs or anything, or use them as rentals, or?
Correct.
That's forbidden?
That's correct. So this is an ownership model. It's the actual HUD program that we use to finance this project is the HUD 213 program. And they have very strict requirements on what you can and can't do as owners. HUD is even involved in helping to set the budget to make sure that there's adequate reserves for the building into the future. And one of those requirements is it needs to be owner occupied. And the other requirement is at least one member of that household needs to be 62 or older. So there's no subletting. Again, the shares appreciate at a fixed amount, so you have no speculation. There's nothing to speculate about, of course, because your shares appreciate at a fixed amount. So you get away from a lot of the speculation and kind of volatility that comes with condos, for instance, or other forms of housing. This is because it's a HUD insured program. It's meant to provide stable, predictable costs for seniors into the future.
So the cost of the units would be somewhat regulated by the HUD components?
The initial share amounts, there's mortgage limits that are set in this program that we cannot go above. Really the main feature is that the shares appreciate at a fixed amount. Costs, will be driven by construction numbers or other, factors that'll be out there, of course. Every time we have a cost increase, it doesn't, it basically adds costs on for our members and makes it harder to market the shares. So we're incentivized to keep those costs low for our members as well.
You had mentioned, or staff mentioned, I believe earlier, there was one additional response that was received afterwards. If you could speak to that and what you received.
I believe the attorney for that, the neighboring apartment building, and we have had a conversation and we've spoken, but that is that individual. So I'll just, full disclosure, that person's here.
Okay, great.
And we can't ask the cost of what it cost, right?
Well, I'm in the process right now of pricing out the shares. The lumber price is, every time I open my browser, that takes me right to what the current lumber price is. So it's something that we watch every day. Appliance prices. Of course, the pandemic really threw everything kind of for a loop. So hopefully as we're on our tail end of that, hopefully that things kind of come back down to normal. So.
Okay, well, that sounds great.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. And now we'll open that up to public hearing if somebody would like to speak on that then.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. My name is Stephen Opheim of the firm Dudley and Smith, the attorneys for CC Apartments LLC, who own the neighboring property to the west at 1880 to 1890 East Shore Drive, the Parkview apartment complex, a 72-unit apartment complex. We submitted a letter to Mr. Martin that identified a handful of items which we have some questions on. I've had an opportunity to speak briefly to Mr. Conlon for the applicant. Our concerns or issues rise under an understanding of the elevation, particularly of the ground level of the applicant's property, and compared to the ground level of our building at the Parkview Apartments. Second, the setbacks, particularly on the west side of the subject property and how that relates to the location of our apartment complex. The third item deals with landscaping and screening, particularly on the west side of the subject property, given that we're a 72-unit apartment complex. Just make the observation that in the staff report indicated a opportunity to add 25.5 caliper inches and would request consideration be provided to the west side of the property where there could be benefit to the owners, or rather the occupants, the residents, with respect to that property. The landscaping and screening, of course, is an interest. I understand that the plans provide that the subject property, that building will be located not aligned, and perhaps they'll speak to that issue after my comment about the location relatively of the two buildings, as it were, or the building structures on the respective property. Fourthly, the water retention plan and any runoff impact on our property. I've had some discussion with Mr. Conlon about that. He can perhaps address that issue. A fifth point that we raised in the letter is just understanding that the construction hours will be within the city ordinance. Again, 72-unit apartment complex, so to minimize the effect of the construction activity that's taking place. And finally, that we understand that if there's any changes that are being made to any of the plans in the process, that we be advised of that which will be taking place. So Mr. Conlon has a copy of my letter. I did receive some comments initially from Mr. Martin. Thank you for those. But my letter and the comments here are opportunity as stated here by one of other commission members, and so would use this as an opportunity for my questions to be answered by Mr. Conlon for your benefit. Thank you.
What year were the apartments built?
I don't know that exact year. I do know that there was some 2006 and 2007, it's my understanding that there was an issue that arose with respect to when the boundary lines for the property was reset, that there was an exchange of deeds that took place. I don't know off the top of my head what year the apartments were constructed.
Chair and Commission, 1965.
Okay.
I'd be happy to address a couple questions. If it's possible to show this, maybe the site plan, we can just speak to the location of our building relative to, that's perfect. So you'll note, Commissioners, that our building, if you were to exit our parking garage, which is the southernmost part of our actual structure, and if you were to turn due, west, you'd be looking at the covered parking building of the apartment building. So they have the 2 apartment buildings, and then there's actually a covered parking structure. So we don't, the buildings, we tried to purposely step back our building from the apartment building to just give some space, not only for their residents, but for the owners who will be purchasing home plans within our building. Want to make sure that we had some space there. So we spoke to kind of the height of the building relative to the apartment buildings. Of course, we are up higher. 18 feet higher. The flat roof, with respect to the stormwater, benefit of having the flat roof, we actually channel all of our stormwater down, including down the parking, surface parking, and the drive aisle to our storage tanks, which are located on the eastern part of that drive aisle, which is great. So we capture all of our stormwater at that one single location, filter it before it's discharged. Very efficient way of doing that.
Is it filtered or infiltered?
But it seems to me that what he was talking about is that you have 2 existing buildings,
Yes.
and you're going to be in the middle, and you're going to be elevated, more
Yes.
than the existing 2 buildings.
Yes.
So he's worried about the stormwater and all those things.
Sure.
That is what he was talking about.
Right, and that's the beauty of the system that we've designed here, I think, is we're capturing all of that in one single place with these tanks. And so all of the impervious surface drains right down from that parking, down the drive aisle, and into the underground tanks, along with all of the water that's captured on the roof comes down and is piped right into that system. So with respect to impervious surface, you really can't have a better system using the gravity of the topography that we have here, which is really nice.
Certainly,
I wish I had thought of that, but it was our civil engineers.
Well, I don't see that as an issue. It's something that you have I think there's a wetland behind you.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. And then with respect to setback, we do have a small area of where we're into the setback, if you will. It's that very top corner unit has its deck is actually a couple feet into the setback. So, and if you were to stand on that deck, you looked west, you're looking out over the wetlands. So you're not close to the other apartment buildings. There's really nothing else over there. It'll never be developed. It's a wetland. So that's why we chose to move forward with our application, even with that being there, with the hopes that it's as you kind of view it, you understand why we did that.
Now, do you think that would be wise to maybe, after we're done here, maybe just kind of go over and talk with him a little bit to answer his questions that would, then he'd know, we wouldn't have to write it up or anything, and just kind of.
Sure.
That would be probably the best way to deal with his questions on,
Absolutely. No, happy to do it.
Would that satisfy him meeting with you then a little bit later? Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody have any other questions? Close. Is there anyone that would like to speak? You're just here visiting?
I'm here for the third item.
Oh, okay.
I had the opportunity to learn a lot about a couple topics tonight.
Okay.
My inbox is down to like 1 email.
Third item is heat.
And you have nothing there then? Okay.
We have a lot of pretty pictures we can show, and we're ready to show. But.
Okay. Yeah, we've got all the pictures in here. It looks like a beautiful building. So.
Thank you.
All of them just seems to be attachment 9.
Yeah.
You can understand him. I can't with that mask on.
So we have about 4 attachment 9 over here.
Yes, yes.
So I will close the public hearing then, since there are no one to speak on that. Somebody like to make a motion? How about Cheryl? You look like you're...
Am I on? Yes. I'll make a motion to approve a conditional use permit for a shoreland planned unit development resolution for a 60-unit senior housing cooperative building to be constructed at 1875 East Shore Drive.
There's been a motion by Cheryl,
Second.
second by Deshar. All those in favor?
Aye.
Right?
Hearing all ayes, this passed.
I'll make a second motion.
Yep.
To approve a preliminary plat and final plat resolution for the 60-unit senior housing cooperative at 1875 East Shore Drive.
Second.
There's been a motion by Cheryl, second by Deshar. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Hearing all ayes, passed. Just our recommendation, and this goes before the city,
On City Council on October 11th.
October 11th.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I didn't want to get shot twice out in the parking lot.
That would be you.
Make sure you don't leave, Jeff. I want to talk to you. We are at number 4, the zoning code text amendment, dramatic LED signs.
As you recall, last month, we had a discussion regarding whether or not we wanted to amend our, the sign code as it relates to dynamic displays in residential areas. I'm not going to go through all the specifics, but they are currently allowed in our commercial district and manufacturing district. And you directed us, staff, to prepare a draft ordinance that would allow for these types of signs for institutional and public uses, but with certain key standards. And based on the notes that I took that evening, some of the key items were size, sound, setbacks, time of display, and brightness. I did include some of those photos from last time showing those signs. The City Council is tentatively scheduled to review this on October 11th. I'm not going to read through each section. I did do that with the Design Review Board, which, by the way, they did vote to recommend approval of this. Again, there's the map showing the institutional properties throughout the city of Maplewood. We discussed at the meeting last month requiring a comprehensive sign plan for these types of signs. So that's what this first slide is showing, that we are adding that in as a requirement. We're also adding in a definition for institutional and public uses because we discovered that there wasn't one. This is directly from our comprehensive plan. Here's where we are adding this type of signage in for public and institutional uses in our residential and limited business commercial neighborhood zoning districts. And then this final section, this is all the specific standards that we are proposing. This is based on your feedback and the analysis that we did together of those 6 communities and what we thought made the most sense given your feedback. So again, I'm not going to read through each one, but some of the key points are a comprehensive sign plan, which would go to the Design Review Board, not to you guys, for these types of signs. And again, I'm assuming you've read through all this, so we've incorporated the setback requirements, the distance requirements, the notification requirements, sound, timing, all those things. If you have specific questions, please let me know. That is all. Do you have any more feedback or comments? At this time, this is scheduled again to go to the City Council on October 11th.
I read through it. I think this was very well done. Covers everything we were looking for.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Yes, thank you for incorporating our feedback and specifically the sound piece too. I did appreciate that. I do have one question, hopefully a quick
absolutely.
one. just reflecting on the conversation earlier around notification and 500 feet, would it be something we would want to consider that it's just 500 feet here too, to maintain consistency?
Chair and Commission, so when an item, and when we're talking about consistency, so when an item just requires Community Design Review Board review, the code says 350 feet today.
Got
When
it.
it comes to this group, it's 500 feet.
Perfect. That is great clarification. Thank you.
I'm just,
today now.
I'm thinking about the half hour before sunset and the half hour after sunrise. I'm just.
When you can't see, so it'll be a good idea to keep it that way.
So it's,
You don't want it very, very bright or
Right.
or not bright enough at certain times of the day.
so it's
And so
before-
that's what that's doing.
Right. Okay. I was just trying to process that through my mind. so
Yeah.
that they weren't like the same, like with the darkness, but no, it's after and before.
Chair and commission, we purposely make these ordinances really like a math problem, a word problem.
Great. Do we have to approve anything on that, or?
Yes, you have a, Chair and commission, yes, you have a motion before you on your first
But you have
page.
to have a public hearing, so you at least have to ask.
Did you want to speak, ask any questions, or? I was just kidding.
I was just going to say, here, my name is Sylvia, I work at Old Architects and Engineers. I'm here on behalf of the school district. They actually had their school board meeting this evening, so they could not be here. And then they also had meetings at the city of North St. Paul this evening. So another one of my representatives was in North St. Paul all evening. So busy night for them. So no, it was really just to answer questions if you had how this would apply to the school district. And I will report back to them how tonight went, and we'll be back at city council. We'd still have to apply and all of that, so.
Yes.
A couple
So-
steps left, but.
This gives us a defined definition of what everything needs to be. Before, we were kind of in limbo about that, so now we've got it all worded out right so that they'll know exactly what to do.
Yep, I reviewed it with the school district, and we took no exception or didn't have any comments, so we didn't see any, why this wouldn't work well for what they had originally tried to request, so.
It does, it falls right into that. Perfect. Well,
Yeah,
thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. Jeff, did you want to say anything?
I think I'm good.
Okay, then I will close the public hearing. Motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the draft ordinance amending the city sign code.
There's been a motion by John, second by Cheryl.
Sorry, yes, got excited.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. You guys ayes down there, or?
Yes,
Aye, sorry.
Motion, so they better be.
Okay. Hearing all ayes except for Alan is absent.
Yeah.
This passed. This is just our recommendation, goes before the city on the 11th also?
That is correct, Chair and commission.
Okay. New business?
Chair and Commission, staff does not have anything further for you tonight.
Okay, then we, I guess that's it then. I guess there's,
Staff, what happened to the mediary that was gonna go up in, by Highway 61?
Oh, sure. Do you have
The what?
The metery.
Oh, it's actually, Chair and Commission, it's interesting that you say that. I just got an email today, I wish I had my computer open because I could pull it up, but it's happening.
Oh, it is happening, yeah.
Yes, it is happening. I actually just got an email from the new property owner here. It's just been a longer process for them and closing and everything else, but
Okay.
it is happening. They're not breaking ground anytime soon. There haven't been any permits or anything. Not breaking ground, they're not breaking ground,
All
but,
right.
doing any major renovations tomorrow. But they are looking at having some chickens on site and maybe some goats. That's what his request was today. So we're gonna have something I need to talk to some other staff about, but
yeah, 'cause
for
on his-
entertainment.
Because on his website, he was hoping to be, right near the beginning of October. and then-
Yeah.
Goat and chicken yoga?
I don't know what all the specifics are that led to the delay, but as far as I know, everything's moving forward.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
You guys want all this?
I make a motion and we adjourn.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can take any plans if you don't want them.
Nope.
So I will take them back.
All right.